I wasn't supposed to be home that early. The crew shut down after a power failure hit the generator around noon. There wasn't much point in hanging around the site after that. No tools, no lights, no sound but the wind dragging through the frame of the unfinished porch. I packed up, tossed my gear into the truck, and told the guys I'd see them Monday. It was Friday, early spring, the kind of day where the clouds can't decide if they're coming or going. I remember thinking I'd surprise Taylor, maybe bring home dinner. Maybe it'd be one of those rare nights lately where things felt simple again. The street was quiet when I pulled into the driveway. No kids outside, no lawnmowers running. Her car was already there. It should have been comforting. Instead, there was this odd stillness, like I'd stepped into a moment that wasn't mine to witness. I shut the truck door softly, trying not to slam it out of habit. Walked up the porch steps, unlocked the door, and stepped into silence. Not the peaceful kind, though. Not the kind where someone's just upstairs reading or napping. No, this was calculated silence. Staged. I dropped my keys in the bowl and kicked off my boots. The smell of her perfume hung faintly in the air, sweet, warm, a little heavier than what she usually wore. I followed the scent upstairs, half expecting to hear her on a call. Taylor works in corporate strategy, meaning she talks in PowerPoints, answers her phone on speaker, and says things like circle back without irony. Video meetings aren't unusual, but something about that afternoon didn't feel like the others. I got to the bedroom and stopped. The door was slightly ajar. Her laptop was open on the bed. The webcam light was on and a man's face filled the screen. He wore a navy business suit, no tie, collar slightly relaxed. Clean cut. Confident. Not overly polished, but clearly someone used to being watched. He was talking something about a proposal and metrics. The tone was casual. Too casual. His voice didn't match the corporate cadence Taylor usually brought home. It was warmer, like he was chatting over drinks, not delivering numbers. And Taylor? She was sitting on the floor in front of the laptop, cross-legged, back perfectly straight, framed almost too perfectly in the **T. She wore a silk camisole, cream-colored, thin straps. Not exactly business attire. Her hair was pinned up like it was meant to look effortless, but I knew how long that took. The second she saw me, she didn't jump. She didn't mute the call. She didn't even flinch. She just looked at me and reached out her hand toward me, not the screen. A gesture so subtle it might have been meaningless. But it wasn't. There was a softness in it, a familiarity like muscle memory from 1,000 quiet mornings and goodnight touches. The kind of gesture you don't share with a stranger or a coworker, not without history behind it. It lasted half a second. Maybe less. But it stuck. I stood there for a beat too long. The man on screen didn't seem to notice me, or if he did, he didn't show it. Just kept talking, eyes locked on hers. Taylor's gaze flicked between me and the screen, her face unreadable. Then I turned around and walked out. Didn't ask anything. Didn't say a word. My pulse wasn't racing. There was no dramatic flash of heat, no pit of dread in my stomach. Just a quiet, unsettling shift like gravity had tilted slightly off-center. I went downstairs and poured a glass of water, sat at the kitchen table staring out the window at the neighbor's dog chasing a squirrel along the fence line. Maybe 5 minutes passed. Maybe 20. I lost track. Eventually, she came downstairs, moving like nothing had happened. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain, at least, not right away. She just asked if I'd gotten off work early. Like this was a normal Friday afternoon. I nodded. Generator died. That's all I said. She made tea. Sat across from me. Sipped, exhaled, then looked up like she'd just remembered something mildly inconvenient. That call you walked in on, that was my supervisor, she said. We were reviewing a slide deck for Monday. He likes to keep things casual. Right, I said. Casual. She didn't laugh. Didn't flinch. Just tilted her head and continued. The gesture? When I reach for you? That was, she paused, choosing her words with surgical care. A support thing. He was nervous about a proposal he's leading. I do that sometimes. It helps him stay grounded. I nodded again, slower this time. I didn't push. But I knew her. Or I thought I did. And that didn't add up. Taylor's the kind of person who prepares 3 days in advance for meetings. She builds strategy decks with precision, keeps a separate folder for every department head she reports to, and always triple-checks the lighting before joining a Zoom call. She doesn't sit on the floor in silk. She doesn't coo encouragement to her supervisor like a schoolgirl whispering confidence into a lover's ear. But there was no blush in her cheeks. No guilt in her tone. Just controlled calm. The kind you get when you're used to deflecting questions that never get asked. We didn't talk about it again that night. She watched a crime drama on the couch while scrolling through her phone. I pretended to read something on mine. At one point, she asked if I wanted to order takeout. I said sure. We had Thai. She ate slowly, casually, like nothing had shifted. I kept seeing the gesture in my mind. The way her hand had moved toward me out of instinct, maybe. Out of habit. Like she was trying to blur the line between us and that screen. Trying to pretend the overlap was normal. And I kept thinking about how she hadn't looked surprised. Only irritated. As if I'd walked into a private room without knocking. As if I was the one out of place. That night, I couldn't sleep. Taylor was already out cold by the time I slid into bed. Back turned. Breathing steady. Her phone on the charger face down as always now. It used to be that we'd fall asleep facing each other, feet tangled, saying stupid little things about the day. Now it was silence. Strategized, professional silence. Like even sleep had to be managed. I stared at the ceiling, my thoughts circling like a ceiling fan that wouldn't shut off. I replayed the afternoon over and over. That man's face. Her body language. The way she didn't even pretend to be caught off guard. And then, like a dam cracking, the memories started to flow in small things. Things I'd pushed aside, explained away, ignored because I thought the cost of asking questions was higher than the price of pretending everything was fine. I don't remember exactly when it started. Maybe after we got engaged. That's when things shifted, slowly but steadily, like someone rearranging furniture 1 inch at a time, so subtle you don't notice until you're stumbling through a room that no longer fits. Before the ring, she was present. Excited. Planning weekend trips, pinning kitchen designs, calling my mom just to say hi. After the proposal, she got quiet. Detached. She said it was work stress, big projects piling up. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? But that was the start of her new routine. She stopped showing up to family dinners. Always some last-minute meeting or travel obligation. They really need me on this one, she'd say. It's a chance to prove myself. I was proud of her. I told her that every time. But somewhere in all the ambition, the we started to become I. She talked about the house like a project, not a home. She left decor choices to me, skipped out on walkthroughs with the contractor. Said she trusted me. It didn't feel like trust. It felt like detachment disguised as delegation. There was a time, maybe 6 months before the wedding, when she came home from a one-day leadership summit in Charlotte. She was unusually giddy. A little glassy-eyed. I hugged her when she walked in and noticed a scent on her jacket, sharp, musky, masculine. Definitely not hers. Not mine either. Did someone spill something on you? I'd asked, half joking, half probing. She blinked, then smiled. Oh, that? One of the guys on the team gave me a quick hug goodbye. I think he wears something expensive and obnoxious. She wrinkled her nose like it annoyed her. I nodded. Let it go. Didn't bring it up again. 2 weeks later, I was unpacking her overnight bag from another trip, this time to Philly, when I found a small box tucked under a sweatshirt. Cologne. Expensive, unopened, sealed. I held it up and asked her about it. Oh, she said, like she'd forgotten it was there. It's a gift. For a coworker. He just got promoted. She sounded casual. A little too casual. I asked which coworker. She said a name I didn't recognize. Then she changed the subject. Back then, I wanted to believe that trust meant giving the benefit of the doubt. That asking too many questions would only make me the problem. So I chose silence. Again. And again. And again. It became a pattern. Like the way she started turning her phone screen away whenever I walked by. Or the way she'd set it on Do Not Disturb at night but still flinch when it buzzed on the dresser. Notifications disappeared before I could even glance. She said it helped her sleep. That she was trying to set boundaries between work and home. It sounded reasonable. Everything always sounded reasonable. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was rotting beneath the surface. There were days she'd go completely dark from 8 to 11 p.m. with no explanation. Late calls, she'd say. Europe team. I'd nod, tell her to get some rest, and sit on the couch wondering when her job became a black hole that never gave anything back. There were changes in her wardrobe, too. More silk. More lace. Things she never wore around me. I'd find receipts for lingerie tucked into bags of dry cleaning, but never see them come out. She said she liked to feel good underneath her work clothes. Said it boosted her confidence. I didn't argue. And yet, in bed, she barely touched me anymore. The lies we tell ourselves to keep the peace. How we become complicit in our own confusion. I remember one night I caught her smiling at her phone. Not the absent-minded type of smile people make at memes, but the shy kind. The kind that has meaning behind it. She noticed me watching and locked the screen. I was just looking at a funny message in the team chat. she said. Someone sent a meme about Excel crashing. I laughed. I even believed her. But that was the night I started wondering if she was living in two different worlds. One with me and one that only existed through glowing screens and late-night calls. Maybe that's when the seeds of doubt really began to sprout. Now, lying next to her as she breathed peacefully under the comforter, I realized I had been ignoring a mosaic of signs, each one brighter than the last. My memory sharpened. Her voice in my head, claiming to be too tired to call my mom on her birthday. Her laughter echoing through the bathroom as she closed the door mid-conversation. The business trips with vague agendas and no photos. No room service receipts. Just a flight confirmation and silence. What kind of supervisor asks for meetings from their employee's bedroom? What kind of marriage operates on this much fog? At some point, I dozed off. My sleep was shallow, fragmented, the kind where you wake up feeling like you never slept at all. When I opened my eyes, sunlight was already bleeding through the blinds. Taylor was gone. Up and out, no note, no whisper. Just the soft hum of her toothbrush buzzing in the other room and the faint click of the front door locking behind her 15 minutes later. I sat there in the quiet, staring at the pillow she'd left behind, still faintly indented with the curve of her head. I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was happening. And deep down, I already knew what it was. The confirmation didn't come through a text message or a slip of the tongue. It came from a photograph. We'd been back from our honeymoon just under a year when I started doing renovation work in Richmond, out-of-town projects, tight crews, short-term contracts. It helped clear my head, gave me something physical to hold on to while the rest of my life started feeling less certain. Taylor had a friend in Richmond too, some colleague she'd gone to grad school with. She visited twice, once for a conference, another time for a team-building summit. That second trip was the one that stuck in my mind. She'd left in a rush, barely said goodbye, and forgot her charger, which I ended up overnighting to her hotel. I remember her text, "Thanks, babe. Lifesaver red heart," followed by complete silence for the next 24 hours. No photos, no check-ins. Just a generic back-to-the-grind message when she got home, sounding more annoyed about her Uber than anything else. I told myself not to pry. Again. Then, 3 weeks later, it happened. I was scrolling through my work email late one evening, answering bids, reviewing blueprints, the usual grind. One of my contractors, Vince, had CC'd me in a group message with some guys I barely knew. Attached at the bottom of the thread was a casual Instagram story link. Probably meant for someone else, just a harmless photo dump from a rooftop lounge downtown. It was the kind of place Taylor had mentioned during her trip. Out of curiosity or maybe just boredom, I clicked it. At first, it was just noise. Blurry faces, champagne glasses clinking, a skyline drowning in golden hour light. But in the corner of the fourth frame, near the terrace railing, two figures stood close together. Not quite center stage, not posing, just there. They weren't the focus, but my eyes went right to them. One of them wore a dark blue coat, Taylor's coat. The one she rarely wore because she claimed the sleeves felt too tight when layered, but it flattered her, and she always kept it on hand for fancier events. The lighting wasn't great, and the photo was compressed, but I knew it was her. You know someone long enough, you can recognize them by posture alone. The man with her was taller, light beard, navy blazer. They were leaning into each other, not shoulder to shoulder like friends, but that slight, unmistakable tilt of shared gravity. His hand rested against her lower back, a touch so casual, so in asterisk mate, that I could feel the weight of it across my own spine. My pulse didn't spike. My hand didn't tremble. I just stared. I screensh asterisk Ted the photo. Zoomed in. Taylor's face was half-turned, hair pulled back. She was smiling, not for the camera, but for him. A real smile. The kind I hadn't seen in months. Maybe longer. The caption read, "Richmond Rooftop Vibes Sun Sparkles #closing deals." Posted by some girl named Alyssa. Her profile was private. But I didn't need access to know what I was looking at. The timestamp was from the same day Taylor had flown to Richmond. She told me her team was hosting breakout sessions all afternoon. Said she'd be back at the hotel by 7. I'd offered to FaceTime and she claimed she'd be too wiped out. Instead, she was wrapped up in someone else's presence, laughing, comfortable, unbothered. It wasn't definitive proof in a legal sense, no kissing, no timestamp declaration, but in the court of my gut, it was enough. More than enough. And suddenly, all the moments I had doubted myself started rearranging themselves like puzzle pieces snapping into place. I didn't confront her that night. I printed the photo instead. Plain paper. Black and white. The way you'd print a shipping label. Cold. Efficient. No drama. Then I placed it on her pillow. I didn't attach a note. No text. No, we need to talk. Just the image, blurry, distant, undeniable. I slept on the couch. Didn't hear her come in. Didn't hear her see it. By morning, she was gone. The closet was emptier. The shelf in the bathroom missing all its delicate clutter. No suitcase. No toiletries. No goodbye. Just a slip of paper left on the kitchen counter. I'm sorry. I never meant for you to find out this way. I'll be in touch. T. No denial. No explanation. No fight. It wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. And maybe that's what hurt the most. She didn't ask to talk. Didn't beg for understanding. She didn't even attempt to spin it into something less than what it was. She just disappeared, like someone quitting a job they knew they never planned to keep. The rest of the day passed in a haze. I didn't eat. Didn't answer my phone. Just walked from room to room, taking inventory of what remained. Her scent still lingered on the robe she forgot to take. One of her earrings sat abandoned in the tray by the sink. I found an empty coffee mug under the bed, hers. Lipstick stained. It's funny the things you notice when someone leaves. All the small signs they were preparing to disappear long before you caught on. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not my parents. Not my brothers. Not even my friend Lucas, who'd introduced us years ago. I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet, saying it would have made it too real, too permanent. So instead, I worked. I showed up to the site Monday morning like nothing had happened. I drilled, sanded, hauled, measured. I didn't talk much. The guys assumed I was just tired. I didn't correct them. A week passed. Then another. No calls. No letters. Just the phantom presence of someone who'd once shared my mornings. Now reduced to a ghost in old receipts and a half-used bottle of conditioner. I kept the photo, folded it, slipped it into the back of my wallet. Not because I needed to keep reminding myself, but because part of me still couldn't believe it had happened. She'd chosen someone else. And she didn't even say goodbye to my face. I didn't call her. Not once. After she left, I expected to feel rage. Or grief. Or something loud. Instead, everything inside me went quiet. Not numb exactly. Just still. Like the moment after a storm when the power's still out and you're waiting for the world to flicker back on. But nothing did. So I left. The house, the neighborhood, the routines. It all felt like trying to live inside an empty shell of a story I didn't believe in anymore. I packed what I needed, told the property manager I was taking an extended leave, and drove across the state line to Indiana, where an old watermill renovation was just getting started. I had bought the place on a whim 2 years earlier. It sat on the edge of a forgotten lake, surrounded by a mess of dying trees and crooked fencing. Everyone said the structure was a lost cause. I saw bones worth saving. Maybe I needed something to fix that couldn't lie to me. Something broken but honest. I moved into a trailer I parked beside the foundation. It was cramped and cold and smelled like metal and old plywood. But I liked the simplicity. Wake up. Brew coffee over a camping stove. Work till my hands ached. Fall asleep with the sound of wind brushing against aluminum siding. Days became muscle memory. I sanded beams, installed insulation, stripped old machinery down to its cleanest pieces. No one asked questions. I hired 2 local laborers who kept to themselves. We worked in silence, only speaking when we had to. I liked it that way. The ache faded slowly. Not with time, but with sweat. Every hammer swing dulled a little more of the noise in my head. I didn't think about the photo, or her note, or the empty house I'd left behind with the mug she'd once called her favorite still sitting in the dishwasher. But the silence didn't last. 2.5 weeks after she disappeared, I got an email. No subject line, just her name in the inbox. I almost deleted it without opening, but my finger hovered frozen. The message was brief. I know I owe you more than an explanation, but this is all I have right now. I was part of an internal review at the firm. There were inconsistencies in the audit reports. The person you saw, his name is Nicholas. He's a senior executive. Yes, we were involved. I didn't expect it to go as far as it did. I was asked to play a role. A kind of bait. I'm not proud of how I did it, but I helped uncover fraud. I have documentation, emails, transaction logs, signed statements. I'm sending it in case you ever need to understand. This wasn't about you. But I know that doesn't make it better. Taylor. Attached were a string of PDFs, password-protected folders, spreadsheets, exported chat logs. All of it looked official. Stamped. Dated. A dozen small arrows pointing to a larger truth. Her office was a mess of shady accounting practices, and somehow she'd been in the middle of exposing it. Or so she claimed. I read it once. Then again. Then sat staring at the screen, completely unable to tell if I was looking at redemption or just a rewritten ending. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have questions. I did. Hundreds. But at that point, I didn't trust anything with her fingerprints on it. Her version of the truth bent and flexed depending on the lighting. One day it was devotion, the next it was betrayal. And now this? A calculated act of justice? Maybe it was real. Maybe she'd done something brave. Or maybe it was just a post-burn narrative to make herself feel like the arsonist was also the firefighter. I wasn't about to be her audience anymore. So I let the message sit in my inbox, unopened after that, like a fire alarm that had already burned the house down. That night, I drank for the first time in weeks. Just 2 fingers of rye, but it hit harder than I expected. I sat outside the trailer, wrapped in a flannel blanket, watching the trees move under moonlight. The mill loomed beside me like the skeleton of something ancient. I thought about my dad, who used to say some places carried memory in their walls. Maybe that's why I'd chosen the mill. It had no memories. Just space. The next morning, I erased her contact. Removed her from my phone. Disabled location sharing, just in case I forgot and checked. I closed our joint bank account, transferred the last of the shared savings into a legal retainer, and canceled the lease on the house. It didn't feel dramatic. Just overdue. By the end of that week, there were no more traces of her in my day-to-day life. But memory isn't something you can cut out like rot. It lingers in habits. I'd still reach for my phone at lunch to text her about something dumb, a bird crashing into the site window, or how the floorboards squeaked like a horror movie soundtrack. And every time, I'd stop mid-gesture, staring at the blank screen. I didn't miss her. Not really. I missed the version of her that had existed before the slow unraveling. The woman who used to sit barefoot on our balcony eating strawberries at midnight, laughing about something I'd said in my sleep. I missed that sound. But that woman hadn't lived with me in a long time. And it wasn't grief I was feeling anymore. It was relief. Clean pain. The kind you know will heal, given time and space. 2 weeks later, the documents came again. This time in a padded envelope, no return address. Inside, a flash drive and a handwritten note. You don't have to believe me. But I wanted you to have this in case anything comes out publicly. There may be press coverage. I gave a statement. I didn't name you. I tossed the flash drive into the back of my toolbox and left the note in the envelope. If she was telling the truth, the fallout would come whether I looked at the files or not. One of the guys on the crew asked me that day if I had family nearby. I said no. He didn't ask again. That weekend, I reinstalled the west-facing windows of the mill. As I worked, the sun bled in through the open frames, coating the old stone floors in orange. For the first time in a long while, I felt something shift inside me. Not peace, but maybe the space to let peace in. I still thought of her. Not daily, but when something reminded me, a certain song, or the scent of jasmine, or the word metrics in a podcast. But the thoughts were quieter now. Less like a storm, more like background noise. I wasn't over it. I probably wouldn't be for a while. But I had survived the explosion. And that counted for something. I didn't hear from her for nearly 2 months. No texts. No calls. No more late-night dossiers arriving like bombs in padded envelopes. It was like she'd disappeared into the world she used to live in, the one with wine bars, loyalty points, and boardroom politics. I didn't expect to see her again. I told myself I didn't want to. Then her sister called. It was a rainy Tuesday and I was waist-deep in sawdust fitting reclaimed pine planks into the mill's loft stairwell. My phone buzzed and I almost didn't answer. I assumed it was one of the suppliers or a crew lead asking about material delays. But the screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in over a year, Jordan D. Taylor's sister. We weren't close, but we'd spent enough holidays together that I recognized the tension in her voice instantly. She skipped the small talk. Calvin. I know this is unexpected, but Taylor's in the hospital. She collapsed in the subway. She's stable now, but she asked for you. That sentence alone would have been enough to knock the wind out of me. But she didn't stop there. She's pregnant. There's a moment your brain just refuses to work. Like the circuit breaker flips inside your skull and all the emotional wiring sparks out. Pregnant? I stood still, holding a chisel in my hand like I'd forgotten what tools were for. Did you say it? She's 10 weeks. Roughly. They think it's stress-related. She hadn't told anyone yet. She's asking for you by name. I know you too well, I know things got complicated. But she's scared, Cal. I hung up without promising anything. 10 weeks. I did the math in my head. That would have put conception just before the photo. The same window when she was claiming to be part of some whistleblower plan while also tangled up in some blurry rooftop embrace. It didn't make sense. But life doesn't ask for clarity before it hits you in the face. I didn't drive to the hospital that night. I sat on the trailer steps and listened to the rain bounce off the mill's scaffolding. It sounded like applause or G***fire. I couldn't decide. The next morning I made the trip. The hospital was a steel and glass behemoth on the edge of the city. The kind of place built to look hopeful. But no amount of polished tile or piped-in classical music could soften the air. It still smelled like bleach and slow panic. Jordan met me in the hallway, arms crossed, eyes guarded. She didn't hug me, just gave a tired nod and said she's in room 412. She's been asking for you. She's not in great shape. I didn't respond. Just walked. Taylor was sitting up in bed when I entered, pale but composed. Her hair was tied back in a loose braid. No makeup. Her hospital gown was too big for her frame and her hands looked thinner than I remembered. She looked smaller. Not weaker, just less armored. Hey, she said quietly. I stood just inside the door. I didn't sit. I didn't ask how she was. I waited. I didn't know how else to tell you, she said. I didn't think I'd see you again. I said nothing. She continued, voice trembling slightly. They said it was probably dehydration and stress. I fainted in the subway. Some guy caught me before I hit the ground. A stranger. Isn't that wild? I didn't smile. I'm 10 weeks, she added. They think. And? I finally asked. Her eyes met mine. I think it's yours. Think. That word cracked open something inside me I didn't know I still had the energy to feel. Think. I repeated. You think. She nodded slowly. We were still together. You remember. Before Richmond, before everything blew up. I wasn't with anyone else at that point. Not physically. I let that sink in. The timeline. The caveats. And after Richmond? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then I don't know what counts anymore. It wasn't an answer, but it wasn't nothing either. I'm not asking for anything, she said quickly. Not money. Not a relationship. I didn't want you to find out from anyone else. If you don't want to be involved, I'll understand. But I needed you to know. The room was quiet for a long time. Then I said the only thing I could, we'll find out for sure. She nodded as if she'd already prepared for that moment. There's a way to do it. A non-invasive prenatal test. It takes a few weeks. I already talked to a counselor. She looked down at her hands, then added softly, I'll cover the cost. I didn't agree. I didn't disagree. I left. I drove back to the mill in silence. The rain had stopped. The roads were wet and gleaming, like everything had been scrubbed raw and left to dry. I didn't sleep much that night. The next few days blurred. I returned to the site, kept my head down, worked longer hours. Told the guys I had a migraine if they asked why I looked like I hadn't eaten or showered properly. I didn't mention anything about the hospital. About Taylor. About the maybe baby. Then, for days after the visit, a car pulled up near the trailer around dusk. It wasn't her. It was him. The man from the call. From the photo. From the mess. He wore the same expression I'd seen on the laptop screen, cool, practiced, unreadable. A man who could probably talk his way out of a war crime with enough buzzwords. He held an envelope in one hand. I didn't invite him in. I'm Nicholas, he said, as if I didn't know. I'm here because I wanted to have a conversation that's probably overdue. I said nothing. Just waited. He cleared his throat. Taylor told me she's pregnant. She also said it might be yours. Might be. He nodded. I'd like to confirm either way. I have legal counsel advising discretion. But I'm not here to start anything. I want to know. For everyone's sake. He handed me the envelope. Inside were lab forms. A signed consent. Instructions for a voluntary DNA test pre-birth. Accurate up to 99.9% depending on fetal cell extraction. It's clean, he said. You can run it through your own channels if you want. I'm not trying to be the villain here. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I said, why do you care? He didn't flinch. Because if I'm the father, I'll do what's required. And if I'm not, I walk. Honesty. Brutal and cold. But at least it was honest. I didn't shake his hand when he left. I watched his car disappear down the gravel road, the headlights cutting through the mist like search beams. That night, I sat in the dark of the mill's upper floor, surrounded by unfinished beams and wires that hung like arteries. I held the envelope in my lap, thought about the life Taylor and I almost built. About the version of her who used to sleep in my t-shirts and beg me to make late-night pancakes. And then I thought about a child, maybe mine. Maybe not. The future had never felt more like a locked door. And I didn't know whether I was holding the key or the final nail.